everyone. My name is Raquel Filmanowitz, and I serve as Director of Economic Equity Advisory Group for BMO Harris Bank. I want to welcome you to today's CHARLA series, Secrets of Silicon Valley. We've got a great speaker for you today, Sergio Monsalve, and we are just so thrilled to be a sponsor of Angeles Investors and everything that they're doing as far as promoting education, resources, and a network for Hispanic entrepreneurs and soon-to-be entrepreneurs. And we are about 8 months into our initiative called BMO Empower, which is a $5 billion 5-year initiative aimed at providing access to capital and resources to Black and Latinx communities and founders across the U.S. And to date, after 8 months since the launch, we are very proud to announce that we've deployed over $1.6 billion of our initiative to communities of color across our U.S. footprint. I want to thank you again for joining us today and again sharing our excitement for Angeles Investors and everything that they're doing to move the needle as far as entrepreneurship and promoting Latino founders across our Chicago footprint and beyond. So I'd like to pass it on to Frank at this point to take it over. Frank?
Thank you so much, Raquel. And thank you everyone for tuning in today on July 22nd. It is an honor to be on the advisory as a member for Angeles Investors. And today, as Raquel had mentioned, superstar Sergio Monsalve will be our guest speaker. He is a person that has an incredible story, incredible journey, incredible venture capitalist and investor. So I would like to bring in Sergio Monsalve to start off our charla for today. Hola, Sergio, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, ¿qué tal?
¿Qué tal, Frank? ¿Qué tal? It's always good to see you, Sergio. And, one of the things that we have been in communication, you and I, is I'm also proud that Sergio will be featured in my upcoming book this fall. What inspired me to write that book, of course, is under this pandemic and COVID-19, we saw a lot of the disparities, inequities, and it's important that I dive into some of these questions as we continue today's charla. But with that, I'm going to ask Sergio my first question, which I asked him in the book, is his incredible journey from Mexico to the United States. And please share with us at that young teenage year when you arrived to the U.S. and that big dream of, going to the most prestigious universities in the world, Stanford and Harvard.
No, hey, Frank, thank you so much. You built it up so much. I don't know if I can live up to that introduction, but I wanted to thank you for inviting me and for helping me be a little part of your great book. I'm super excited. To answer your question, I wanted to kind of give the chronology of how I came to be here. It's very humble beginnings, and I still am humbled every day by what Silicon Valley is and represents to me. So it's a beautiful place that I've gotten to love as my second home. Like you said, I was born and raised in La Capital in Mexico DF, no longer DF, but the capital of Mexico. I was never intending. I was born and raised there. Love the place. Love the family, the football, the fiestas, all the F's that you could think of. But in the food for sure. But my father is very entrepreneurial and got a little opportunity to work in northern Mexico in Tijuana, which was when I was 13. My sisters younger, 11 and 9. So it's really the 5 of us, my mom and my dad and the 3 sisters. While we had all of our family in Mexico, we moved to northern Mexico, and eventually we actually got a visa and got to San Diego, and so that's why I grew up for my teenage years. I loved, I didn't speak any English. I had to first and foremost learn English. I'd never expected to be in the U.S. I never planned to be in the U.S. I never wanted to be in the U.S. But that's what it was. So I I made the best of it. I studied. I love studying STEM and engineering and science and math. And that led me to had a tough discussion with my dad when I was applying to college, because in all the Latino countries that I know of, we're not like the UK or the US, where you at 18 years old you go and study somewhere else. You stay in your house and you commute and you come back for two o'clock meal, and then you go back to work. So that was not the case. That was my tradition. And so I had to convince my dad to go away for college. I was lucky enough to get into various schools. I promised him I wouldn't leave California, so I could only apply to colleges in the U.S. Got to Stanford, was accepted to Stanford, and landed in a little place that happens to be very memorable to me, called Roble Hall. Roble Hall is the biggest dorm at Stanford, the first one to admit women, the first one to create multicultural housing, and the one that's the most progressive about sustainability. So fast forward to, I don't know how many years, 30 years, and that's what I named my fund, Roble Ventures, because of what Roble represents. It represents openness, diversity, equity, inclusion, and opportunity, because that's what I saw when I landed at Stanford. I saw a neighborhood of opportunity in Silicon Valley. Fast forward to I then did an MBA at Harvard to round out my engineering degree, and then my business degree. But then with the mindset of coming back and being an entrepreneur and giving back. And when I came back, I decided to be a product manager, a business development manager in various companies, but also an entrepreneur. So I started a company. I was part of two startups. One we took public, the other one sold, the other one we shut down, actually. I was also part of a bigger company that the early days in eBay, and got to work with Mercado Libre down in Latin America as well. And so those were my operating years. I raised funds myself from VCs, and I got to know it from this side of the table. And so fast forward to 2007, after I had done a few startups, I ended up being invited to be a partner at a venture firm called Norwest Venture Partners. And that's where I spent 13 years of my life honing the craft of how to invest, both in early stage, which is where I'd really like to invest, be given my entrepreneurial roots, but also mid stage and late stage. And that's and so I spent 13 years there, and I've been in the last 8 years, I've been able to be very thematic about how to give back, using venture as a tool to open opportunity to other people, especially people of color and women, and people that have not participated in the entrepreneurial and venture process, especially Latinas and Latinos. So that's what I'm doing at Roble.
Oh yeah, and that's great, and that's how you and I met when you were at Norwest, and you were an incredible panelist and judge for a pitch competition that I had at the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit about 5 years ago. And
That's right.
now in your new venture fund, one thing I do want to ask, because you had mentioned early stage investments, and one of the unicorns that we know of is Udemy, and you're very proud of it, because it became a unicorn at a $2 billion valuation with 150,000 instructors, 50 million students, 5,000 corporations, and learning 65 different languages. How did this happen so successfully? And when you think of early stage, what's the growth of that? And now, under COVID, this is the new wave. I mean, really, you rode the wave early. And please explain, investments on that end of the spectrum.
Yeah, well, Frank, this is it's a good question, and I'll tell you the things that led up to that. In 2000, I believe 10, I started thinking about, and this is what leads me to a thematic type of investing, which hopefully is useful to the audience. It's useful, and to me at least, to look at the forest and then the trees and then the trees, and then the forest. So go back and forth between the micro and the macro. So the way I did this is in 2010, I thought about the notion that people. I looked at the world and said, listen, computers are really, really powerful, right, and very smart, getting smarter by the minute, and they get smart because they learn things by minute. Yet humans are meant to study from 5 years old to 18 years old or 21 years old if you go to college, and then you don't come back. You just get those two little pieces of paper that I got and put them up on the wall, and then I'm done. I'm going to work for the rest of my life. So I thought, well, in today's economy, doesn't it make sense to have an ability for you to learn forever in a more formal way? And so the concept of lifelong learning was something that was like stewing in my mind. And even though a lot of people in 2010 said the fastest way to lose money in venture capital is by investing in education. And so it's a very contrarian thing. I invested in one company in 2010 that didn't make it, made all kinds of mistakes. And actually I lost a lot of money. But what I didn't lose is the conviction that this world needed to exist, where somebody could study from 5 years old to 100 years old and continuously improve, right? The reskilling and upskilling of your brain in order not to be obsoleted. And so that's how I came to, in 2013, I came to Udemy after having scanned the world of education and landed into this fantastic little company that had just started monetizing in 2011. So in 2013, 2 years later, I saw that there was something interesting there, and I invested in that round. And it's just because of, frankly, because of the founder, because of the CEO, because of the people around the table, that his company's been able to do what they've been able to do. And I've been happy to be alongside the ride for 7 years as a board member. So it's been super rewarding to see the results of that company, because it's one of the companies that does well by giving people education at very reasonable price. The courses are $30, $40, $50. And they also give economic empowerment to people on the other side, instructors who, in my mind, are heroes, right? The heroes of society are instructors, and at Udemy, we treat them like heroes.
That's exactly what I need to hear, because we need to embrace and lift heroes that are teaching online courses, instructors that are really accelerating the mindset. And one thing I wanted to mention before my next question, because I asked you this question and I loved the response for my book, and it's something that has to do with inequities and the digital divide. And for early stage investors, please listen up to this question, because it really fascinates me. When I was in Miami just a few days ago, and for those who have been to Miami, the freeways are incredibly huge, right? There's all these paths, and you're asking Siri for directions, and you have all these turnoffs. And one of the things of the Silicon Valley, 101, if you traveled 101, especially going through Palo Alto and East Palo Alto, I loved your answer and response for the book about the 101 theory. And the question is, in EdTech and post-COVID, how can we identify more unicorn startups, especially to be of service to the Latinx educational community of what you have identified as the digital freeway 101 divide?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And what you mentioned is if EASTA 101 is where all my fellow Latinos and our fellow Latinos live for the majority, Redwood City, East Palo Alto, and then part of them in the East Bay, while the west of 101, and if you've been to this part of the world, you have the wealthiest communities like Atherton or Menlo Park or Palo Alto or Los Altos. So it's just a clear difference in the opportunity. Yet a lot of our kids interact with each other. They play soccer together. And yet we have this humongous divide. And it is because of this opportunity, and that is not available to them because of education, lack of education, lack of opportunity to educate. I think that's that's the most important thing. Obviously, health as well, but in this case, education does give you an opportunity to thrive. And so, what I'm trying to do is with, for example, with companies like I mentioned, Udemy and a few others. I also invested in a small company in Norway that invested in the Series A. That's now a $4 billion company called Kahoot, and that I invested personally, not through Norwest. I think what you're doing, what you should enable is people to kind of have fun learning, but also have the learning in their fingertips. So with technology, you're able to give education to people in their fingertips, whether it's on a phone or a computer. It doesn't really matter, but you should make it affordable and make it reasonable for them to access it if they want to. And so that I think that's what these companies have been able to do. And I am very, very excited that it's starting to pay dividends, right? We're starting to see people blurring that 101 line, just not fast enough. I wish I could do it faster. I think we need role models. I think we need more of us to be vocal about the opportunities that we can bring to them, so that we can unlock all the opportunity. Think about this: 39% of California is Latino or Latina, and we receive 1% of venture capital.
Yeah.
Yet a third of my meetings today in Roble are happening in Spanish. So I'm starting to see that there's pent-up demand for venture capital among that community, including our meetings, Frank. We greet each other in Spanish and speak in English and Spanish and whatever else. But there's everybody. We're gonna unlock a lot of opportunity if we focus on that.
Yeah, especially in our passion for football, and I predicted Italia would win the Euro, and next year I believe Argentina is going to win the World Cup. I place my bets. I place my bets early. Hey, Sergio, one of the things that with folks listening in, and you're absolutely right about the 1% that are invested into the small startups, the Latinx space, the Latino space. And, too many of the times I often heard, investors pushing or encouraging our community to create a nonprofit, which is okay, a 501c, but we want seed money. We want, to accelerate a startup to become the next, Udemy, Google, PayPal, and that's what's important. So with that, how do we turn our customers into evangelists?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And my website at Roble Ventures, I have a set of, I teach a class at Stanford on entrepreneurship and education tech. And I put out 6 videos on how to start your company. And they're all on YouTube through my website as well. And one of the things I talk about is the fact that the founders of the most important founders of your company are what I called your TLCs, your earliest adopters. TLCs is tolerable and leverageable customers. And the reason I use those 2 words is because choosing the right early customers, the earliest adopters that tolerate an MVP, so tolerate pretty much a minimal viable product, somebody that can give you feedback, somebody that's excited about the solution and will eventually evangelize it to the broader masses. They become, because they're early adopters and they're technologists, probably by definition, they're okay with the new technology, trying new things. They're going to be the ones that people look up to in the majority. The majority will look for the early adopters. So choosing those right based on what you're building is super important. And in that video those videos that I have, I use the example of how the predecessor of the iPhone, probably the most successful product in the world ever, in history of the world probably, was this little thing in 2001 that got launched that maybe the audience wasn't, like some of the audience probably wasn't even born then, is the little iPod with a rotary selector of music. And so their earliest adopters, their TLCs, were the music lovers, because it was amazing that before then we had, if anybody's seen Guardians of the Galaxy, we had that little device that you press play and it's a cassette tape. It's called the Walkman, the Sony Walkman. Basically, the predecessor of the iPhone, the iPod, was the Walkman, or maybe some MP3s in the middle and some CD players in the middle. But essentially, we had an ability to play 8 songs, and you had to play them serially. And so the iPod, Steve Jobs came out with the iPod, but it was horribly looking. If you look at it today, it has nothing to do with what the iPhone looks like. But he chose the early adopters to be feverish music consumers, and they became massive evangelists of this little product that allowed you to play 1,000 songs, and you didn't have to have the album or the cassette tape to play it. So choosing the right folks, the right founders of your product, meaning your first customers, they become your founders, your co-founders, and they're super important. I think that's the most important thing. Product market fit is an evolution, but the first time you get product market fit, it's kind of like a magical moment.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned founders, and I always let folks know, I'm a big sports fan. I played sports, and I say to correlate a founding team is like creating the 5 starters for an NBA basketball team. All you need are 2 superstars, a third, swing man to come in, and 2 solid players. So, Giannis, for example, a couple of days ago wins a championship. He's the CEO. He's the founder. He's the founder and of the glue of that team. So it really is important. I say your starting 5 is so key. And with that, you're now a founder of Roble Ventures. Please let us know about that. How did you take the leap from Norwest Ventures, which is incredibly reputable in the world, not only in the Silicon Valley, and taking that leap of faith and starting your own, Sergio?
No, yeah. And so this has been in the making for a long, long time. I mean, if you look at my trajectory coming from Mexico and then to San Diego, and I wouldn't be speaking to you today had I not focused on education, on lifelong education. And so I always believe that that's important. The other thing is, I think ventures moving very quickly to a world where you need to be thematic and you need to be a specialist. There's too much money out there. Too many people investing. Too many people think Silicon Valley just is going to print unicorns all day long, and in reality, there's just too much money out there. So you need to be differentiated, and the way I differentiate is to really bank on my strengths, which is to focus on this theme that I call human enablement technologies. And by that I mean I only bet on technologies that precisely and deliberately help humans get ahead, but with a mindset of equity, that all humans get ahead. And so I mentioned Udemy as a great example. We offer courses at a very reasonable price to everybody. And so the other day I got a call from a mentee of mine in Tijuana, Mexico, where he was thrilled because of he had graduated from college in Monterrey, and he ended up getting an interview with Google and used Udemy classes to prepare for the interview, and he got the job, and now he's getting paid. I think he's getting paid 5 times what his mom got paid the most in her life, or in dad's life. So he's changing his life because and hopefully a little part was this courses that he took at Udemy. To me, that's super important because it's changing lives.
Yeah.
And so that's why I call it human enablement technologies. And there's more detail on the website on what specific sectors I focus on. You could imagine education, human capital management, productivity in the workplace, 2-sided marketplaces that create new jobs. So it's all about socioeconomic mobility and equity and inclusion. And by the way, the reason I wanted to start it too is because I do want to bet more on Latinos, both from Latin America as well as from the U.S. And so that's one of the things. I'm only one of a handful of Latinos in venture that have been able to kind of go through a long venture career, and so I want to create more opportunities for investors and entrepreneurs among the Latino and Latina community.
And I want to thank all the folks that are listening in, because there's over 150. And speaking of human enablement, there's a person on that I spoke to her last week. Her name's Maria, and she is originally from Argentina, lives here in California now, and focus on STEM and enabling and helping, and these are the kind of things that really I want everyone to know, that you have to really stay in your lane and create a space that VCs will listen to, right? And it's so important. And before we bring Marcelo in, I just want to thank you, Sergio, because your inspiration is inspiring not only us listening, but everyone that is attached to those folks who are listening. So I want to ask Marcelo a question. Marcelo, let's bring Marcelo on.
Hello, Frank, and hello.
Hola, Marcelo. Marcelo, I'm going to ask you a question, and then we'll have you finish off with Sergio. But Marcelo, please, you're friends and a colleague of a dear friend of mine, David Olavencia, who is one of the co-founding members of this wonderful group of Angeles investors. And I wanted to ask you, in co-creating Angeles investors, why was it so important for you and the rest of the team to create this ecosystem?
Well, I think, first let me say thanks to Sergio for being today with us, and thanks to our sponsor BMO for supporting us. I mean, Sergio, your story has been extremely inspiring to me, specifically when I heard that 1/3 of the pitches that you receive in your firm are in Spanish, first of all. And second, I love your concept of tech that is actually good for all humans, right? So I think we need more people like you that are driving the venture capital firm and industry in the direction of diversity and inclusion. So I want to say thanks from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much. So to your question, Frank, on Angeles, I think it started with the passion that a few of our colleagues in Angeles have about supporting the Hispanic community, right? You mentioned David Olivencia. I would also include Adela Cepeda, Emma Rodriguez, and many other people that are part of the board, yourself, with your continued support. But the most important thing was what Sergio was mentioning before. We were also, I would say, impacted by knowing that only 2% of VC funding was going to minorities, and much less than that to Hispanics, right? So we started this experiment, to be honest with you, a couple of years ago. I would say there were 3 or 4 of us looking at some Hispanic owned startups and cutting some small checks. And I would say that as we started to share this with friends, with our colleagues in other organizations that are supporting Hispanics in technology or Hispanic founders. Today we are an angel group of 60 people, right? 65 people as we speak. We have a portfolio of around 12 companies, almost between $3 and $4 million invested, which I know for a person like Sergio, that number may be small, but I have to tell you that we built this angel group in the middle of the pandemic, right? So I would say that the response that we have from the community to support our entrepreneurs and grow companies in difficult times has been second to none. But the main reason and the main outcome that we're looking with Angeles investors is, on one side, is to support, obviously, the Hispanic entrepreneurs, specifically those that are building companies in where technology is at the core of their business models. I mean, many of the industries that Sergio was mentioning at the beginning are industries that we support actively. You will see many of the companies in our portfolio being in the edtech industry or marketing technology, fintech. So we are pretty aligned on that. But on the other side, it's not only supporting the founders, it's also creating this community in where we are somehow educating Hispanics on how to invest in this asset class, right? Not too many people know how to invest in early stage, right? There is risk, there is many times lack of information. And when you build a group of people that are alike, that they have the same background, we're all Latinos and Latinas, we got to learn that we can help each other, right? Above and beyond of the work that the operations team in Angeles Investors, which I respect a lot because they are actually the engine of the angel group, and they actually lend their personal time to make it happen. The community help each other enormously, right? I mean, every time that we have a pitch night after the founders finish their pitch, there is a huge conversation happening in our Slack channels about what do you think about this? Do you have expertise on this industry? Do you think we should invest? Why not? What do you think about the financials? What do you think about the team? What do you think about the technology? And we have such a great community that we have built during the last 2 years that you always find someone that will help in the conversation. And that kind of community feeling for investing, it helps the whole angel group and each of the members to actually, try to invest in this asset class. And so far we have helped many entrepreneurs, but most importantly also we are building a strong community that will continue to invest in the years to come. Sorry about the long answer, but I could actually talk forever about this topic, but thanks for the question, Frank.
You're on mute, Frank.
I think Frank, you're mute.
I think he's in mute.
Okay, there we go. I just Sergio, I'm like you. I saw your kids in the background, so I wanted to make sure my kids were. So Sergio, you get it. I have to mute, and one thing I'll do is I want to go to the audience. This is very engaging and stimulating and great information. So Sergio, if you don't mind, if I could go to the dashboard and ask questions for the audience.
That's great.
We have a good 25 minutes left, so I'll start with Edward and then go to Felipe. But Edward, who's a dear friend of mine, Ed Vargas, asked. He was at AT&T and part of the Hacemos ERG. He helped in the early days, in high tech, where the students at AT&T facilities for STEM workshops, they were part of that flagship. But what AT&T, as we know, is a global giant, but what can we do to encourage other, smaller companies and startups to really accelerate and embrace the Latinas and Latinos in STEM?
I think one of the things that I think it's important is to introduce kids from the beginning to this field, because I think this happens regardless of the race and regardless of the gender. I think there's some level of intimidation that math and science brings to some kids, and I think you need to demystify it. This is why investments, for example, in a company that I just invested in through Roble called InSpirit is so important, because one of my focus areas is to make learning fun and accessible. In my class, for example, I bring another company called CodeSpark, which just sold a successfully, great founder that teaches young girls how to code without having to write a single line of code. It's just the mechanics of how to code. So I think if you make it accessible and fun and make it very reachable at a reasonable price, like I said, I think you're going to start getting people to be very excited about joining STEM fields once they actually know from the beginning that it's a fun thing to do. The other thing is, as we go through, one of the things I'm doing with one of my investors in my fund, who's got a very big mission around inclusivity, is creating videos to role model to younger students, because what I missed when I was growing up is to have a dad and a mom that had worked in technology. My parents were working in other industries, And to me, having some role model that I know that it's accessible, that I know that can be done, is very important to do. So I think it's important to have role models. It's important to know what to do if you wanted to learn the field. And I think we're living in a good time where education is very accessible now, hopefully. And hopefully role models, we can get closer to the younger kids as people that have become excited about investing in technology and all kinds of technology. So I think giving back is a very important thing. And I think it's what's gonna make people really excited and want to join the field, I think.
No, that's absolutely right. And one of the things that we have to look at as far as our entrepreneurial spirit is a need. When there is a need, we have to really go for it. In the early 1900s, I think it was 1901. No one knew that the person that invented the air conditioner was from Buffalo, New York. Buffalo, New York, out of all places, right? So,
Yeah.
So the humidity. But the next question is to Marcelo. Marcelo, this is from a friend of mine, Felipe Mercado, who asks, what advice do you have for those who are new to venture capital? What strategies, advice? It could be a question for both of you guys, but I'll start with Marcelo.
Yeah. So I'm gonna answer from being a new investor in early stage, right? I think I compare this like riding a bicycle, right? You can read 300 books. There are many good books about how to invest in early stage. You should read them. But there is anything like doing it, right? When you ride a bicycle, first time you're gonna try, you're gonna fall a couple of times. Hopefully, you are in a parking lot and the damage is not that big. So learn how to do it from the theoretical aspect, but there is anything like joining Angeles investors, right? I mean, we will embrace you. I mean, and cut your first check of $5,000. Use the community to learn how to do it, and look at that small investment, your first check, as a learning opportunity. Imagine that you are going to an academy on how to invest, and that's your 5,000 fee for learning how to do it in real life. And who knows? Maybe those $5,000 become 20x after a few years, right? So I think the best thing you can do, to your question, is learning and understanding what it is, but also then if you like it and if you are up to it, join a team that will help you do it.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Learning how to fall and getting back up, but being in a place that you're comfortable with. That's great. Sergio?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think Marcelo brings up a very important point, that this business is about learning on the go and an apprenticeship. So I think the only thing I would add is if there's a method, the learning in venture is very slow, because the reason is because you will not know whether you're going to be successful in venture until 5, 10, 12 years from the time you first invested. So the only thing that I tell people is, how can you accelerate that learning in order to get to be a good investor earlier? But I agree 100%. You should invest in work with a club like Angeles, because you have people around you that can teach you and that can work with you, and you could syndicate to them, and you can kind of work together on a deal together. That's absolutely necessary. The other thing I would say is find ways to learn from other people's mistakes, through case studies, through examples, through all kinds of videos, and all kinds of learning opportunities for you to learn what other investors have experienced in different situations. Almost like a little mini MBA, but you're learning on other people's mistakes. One of the things that I like to do too is I became very interested in investing in public equities when I was in college, actually at Stanford. And I joined a club of investors that were students to invest a tiny bit amount of money in public companies. And what you learn how to do there is to actually learn how to read the financials, read the understand the product, use the product, understand the team's background, listen to the earnings calls, and all of those disciplines are great for you to get experience quickly, because all that information is already available to you because it's a public company, and you could then play out the theme very quickly. If you think that Amazon, the stock is going to go up because of XYZ, in 3-4 months, you'll know if that XYZ happened or not, or maybe in 6 months, but it's not going to take 10 years. So you accelerate your learning, and it also accelerate the ability to do due diligence, because the data and the information is readily available to you. While in private investments, it's a little bit more obscure to get that data unless you're in close contact with the CEO, right?
That's great. That's great. So I'm going to ask you both. This is a bonus question, and I know I have a feeling I know the answer to Marcelo, but I have it in my mind, and I'm putting a bet on it, and I'll let you know, Marcelo, if I got it right. Okay. So these three individuals are billionaires, but these three individuals are also explorers, taking risks outside of business and their bets on business. If you could have lunch with one person, which one would it be? I'll start with you, Sergio, and I'll go with you, Marcelo. Richard Branson, Elon Musk, or Jeff Bezos? Sergio.
I think Elon Musk, and because I think he's also pretty wacky and pretty fun to have lunch with. I think he'll have some crazy things to say, so he'd be more provocative. But I think they're all three geniuses and very committed to being courageous, and so I think that's absolutely the number one ingredient I think people need to have in this business, is to have courage and resilience, and those three have it in the best sense of the word.
Exactly, the courage. What about you, Marcelo?
Well, let me see if I disappoint you or not. I mean, I will also choose Elon Musk, right?
Oh, I thought you were going to say Branson, because he's much an explorer like you. Okay, go ahead, Elon Musk. I just lost $5 in my head.
Well, I mean, there is a side of an explorer in Elon Musk, right? With all the plans that he has for space also. But I think what I agree with Sergio about the fun aspect of Elon Musk. I know I'm going to be inspired by his vision about technology and business, but also I'm going to have a great time. But what I really appreciate of Elon Musk is that, just think about this. He's just disrupted maybe the most traditional industry in the world, the automotive industry. After he started with Tesla, you have seen companies like Mercedes and many of the car manufacturers saying, we're going to stop producing combustion engines. And I tell you, I do think if we didn't have him, these things were not going to happen. So to me, that's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And one thing, we have a few minutes left, but I want to see if there's any audience questions, any additional ones before we wrap it up for today. Well, I'll read a comment for both of you guys, because it's important. Maria, she thanks us for today's show, but one thing she's committed to is providing free access to scholarships for the Latinx innovators of the future and building the diverse workforce pipeline that the world needs. And Sergio, you had mentioned diversity and how important it is, and how important is it also, because Sergio, you mentioned early on about Stanford and Harvard scholarships. How important are scholarships for our community, especially under this crisis that we're in? Because we are going back to school, our kids are, but still there's going to be much more need for kids in underserved communities for scholarships more than ever.
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think the financial burden that colleges put on people is it's unsustainable. It's horrible. I think it's gotten better in certain schools, but only the most privileged schools are able to fund all the need of students. For myself, I had to come out of both Stanford and Harvard with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt that I had to pay back, and it took a lot of sacrifice for me to kind of, from both my parents and myself, to kind of take on that debt, believing that you would be able to pay it back at some point. So I just don't think that we should put that kind of burden on people. I'm a board of trustee, for example, at Harvey Mudd College, a college that is amazing in Southern California, in STEM, small college, part of the Claremont schools. And one of the things that we really care about is to funding everybody's needs. Not only that, but that college has moved from, it's all STEM college, moved from 20% women to over 50% women over the lifetime of the current president. So I'm very excited about that. And I know she's very committed to ethnic diversity, as well as 100% funding the need of people in need. So I am excited and encouraged, but I think there's a lot more to do by a lot of different colleges, not just the prestigious ones.
That's great. That's great. We're going to finish off with just two last questions. One from M. Velas. What lesson have you learned from your first VC investment loss? That's a great question.
Two lessons, actually. I'm going to bring two because those are super fresh in my mind. The first deal I ever did way back in 2008, I think it was, when I first joined Norwest, didn't work. We pivoted the company 3 times and ended up selling it to Google for basically money back after 4 or 5 years of struggles. The thing that I learned there is it is so important to be a good person, a good board member, a helpful board member, regardless of whether the company is going to succeed or not. The payback for that, that was very fortunate and thankful, is that that CEO of that company, way back when, just invited me to participate in her new company, which was founded just last year. So even after that many years, she still was inviting me back, and that's because this business of venture is all about people, and I think it's very important to treat people the right way, regardless of whether they're going to fail or succeed. And likewise, I never gave up on her. I even though that company didn't work out, I think she's a fantastic operator and CEO and founder. So I bet on her too. So it's super important. The other one is the example of education. If you do have a big thesis and conviction around, in my case, lifelong learning in 2010, even if my first investment didn't work out in that edtech company that I mentioned, stick with your theme if you believe in it and have conviction, because that investment is what led me to Udemy, and that more than paid for all the mistakes that I've ever made in venture. So I think it's important to be convicted, have conviction about your thematic approach.
Awesome. One last question, and then we'll close out with Marcelo, and of course, with Marcelo being our host for today, Evangelis. Sergio, when do you know if the market is too saturated as far as investments go?
It's hard to tell. I mean, if you think about how crashes happen, how the 2001 and 2008 or 9 financial crisis happened, it was very hard to tell when things are irrational, when you're not making rational sense. For example, most recently, there was a big bubble of SPACs, and that calmed down. Luckily, it didn't explode. It just kind of fizzled a little bit. But you have to be very conscious of what your true compass is and true valuations are. Right now, there's parts of the market that are incredibly frothy and very bound to burst a bubble. So I guess be vigilant about what should something be worth, and what because ultimately it's an expression of price. The overcrowding of things, it will be shown in the price you pay because of the competition. Yeah. So I pay attention to prices and make sure you're very disciplined about it.
That's great advice. And lastly, last comments, Josue says, get to know Fidel Vargas. Fidel Vargas is a friend of mine. He's the CEO of Hispanic Scholarship Fund. And then Tamarin thanks you for the advice. She really is thankful for today, and moving humans forward is very important. And then Sam, as a first-generation immigrant family, he always thought investing was a big risk and saw it as a scheme. Thank you for spending today and encouraging him and all others to invest. I think what Sam is saying is also something that is interesting because, Sergio, when I do some posts, I sometimes I get quite a few views, and then all of a sudden I get a person sending a scheme type of email. I'm like, whoa, hold on, hold on. So I say to Sam, keep your eyes open. And my dad would always say in Espanol, fíjate, really be aware. Fíjate, be aware. And with that, thank the audience. And now I'll pass it on to Marcelo, our host for today of Angeles Investors.
Well, thank you, Frank, for organizing this charla today. Thank you, Sergio, for your time. I can see, because of the questions, that people really got engaged with your story. I mean, what you're doing is fantastic, not only from the VC perspective, but your very fresh perspective in terms of how VC should be more diverse and inclusive, and your leadership is making a difference, right? So we would love to see more Sergios in the VC industry, and I know you are a great role model, and I know many will follow you. So thank you for your time, and all the best with your VC firm. Last but not least, I want to say thanks again to our sponsor, BIMO, for their continued support. They were with us from the very beginning of the journey of Angeles Investors. I do remember that we did our first, and only because of the pandemic, face-to-face pitch night at their offices in Chicago, and we will continue to partner with them as we grow as an organization and as we grow our impact in the VC industry, and specifically helping Hispanic entrepreneurs to grow their businesses. Last, to the ones that are in the audience, thanks for joining. We really enjoy your questions, enjoy engaging with you. And if you are interested in joining Angeles Investors, let us know. Please visit our website, angelesinvestors.com, and you can then find there how to connect with us. We would love to have you joining us, and I can guarantee you that our community will embrace you 100%. So you can start riding that bike without any bad feelings or being scared of falling as you learn investing in early stage. So having said that, thanks everyone, and I hope we see you soon in the next episode of Charlas with Angeles Investors. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.